Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker tonight, Mary P. Yeah, baby.
My name is Mary, and I'm an alcoholic. Boy, Mike was so great. You know, you're going to be disappointed. Oh. Anyway, thank you very much, Mike. All right, so I can't top Mike's pitch, so I'll just tell my story. And anyway, so I'll just start. I was born in Southern California, and my parents were broke and boring, you know. So it wasn't like I didn't have any, you know, we didn't have any money. So I started out my life, I was living in Hermosa Beach, so that wasn't bad. But my dad was like a workaholic. My mom was a housewife. It was kind of boring, you know, and they didn't drink. Nobody drank. And my mom and dad were teetotalers. And so I started growing up, and from the very beginning, I felt like I didn't fit in. I felt like I was, you know, from outer space. I just didn't feel like I fit in with the human race. So I was pretty shut down, and then all of a sudden, when I was in junior high, I started to exhibit a personality, and so people started thinking I was kind of funny, and then I started to really kind of feel like I fit in, and then also I was living at the beach. So as I got into high school, that was in the 60s. I'm old. Anyway, I don't care that I'm old. I think it's great. Anyway, by the way, I got sober in 1975. I got sober March 27th, 1975. I've been sober over 30 years, and life is good. Anyway, well, you woke up. No, I was a little worried. Anyway, I can't compete. I'm sorry. Anyway, see, I was told to leave this mic exactly where it was, and Lowell fixed it. Anyway, anyway, I was living at the beach in the South Bay, and I had felt different, and also, you know, I lived right across the street from Manhattan Beach, and I lived on this boulevard, and we had this rental house that was really tacky, and my mom was a cocktail waitress in a bowling alley, and my dad was a tile setter. And my real dad, she had divorced my real dad, and he was like living in Las Vegas. So here I was in this fairly wealthy neighborhood. I was going to school in Manhattan Beach, and everybody had money, and my parents were really poor, and so I really didn't feel like I fit in. And then, though, I was in high school, and, well, I was developing, you know. I became a woman, or a young woman, and I was hanging around with surfers. I started hanging around with surfers at the beach, and, you know, I fit into a bikini. So all of a sudden, I fit in, you know, and the surfers back then, they drank a lot, you know. They drank a lot of beer and wine and tequila. That's what we did. And so it was a really wild and crazy time. And so that was when I started drinking. I was about 16 years old when I took my first drink, and I only drank and used till I was 28 years old. And during those years, you know, I was gone beyond recall in a few years. I started drinking, like I said, alcohol, you know, wine and beer and everything. And then I started shooting dope, and I started taking psychedelics, I took speed, I took every kind of drug there was that at the time. And by the time I finished drinking and using, I was pretty much, you know, I'd done it all, and I was really tired. And when I came to AA, I was at that point where I couldn't talk to anybody. I was so afraid of humans that the only time I could talk to anybody was when I was drunk and or, you know, high on something. And so when I got sober, I came to AA, and I got sober in East Hollywood. That was the happening place to get sober at the time. And I don't know what it was, you know, the people weren't like really cool like you guys, you know. They were just, you know, AA back then, there were young people. You know, a lot of people think, oh, there were never young people 30 years ago. Well, you know what, there were. The whole group wasn't, you know, a lot of really cute young people. You know, there were young people, but they weren't really cute. And so I came to meetings in Hollywood, and it wasn't people I would have drank with, you know. I would never have drank with those people. Because, you know, growing up at the beach and hanging out with surfers, I mean, surfers were really cute, you know. And then I skipped this part, I didn't meet you, but when I was living at the beach, you know, I was having all these minimum wage jobs. I mean, I never, ever had the opportunity to go to college. My parents didn't know anything about college. None of the family I came from were college graduates or even attended college. So it was just not a concept that they even considered. So I was like, drifting around the beach, doing minimum wage jobs, and I had this Aunt Kay, and she was like this crazy drunk. She was, you know, the horror of the family. When she would call, she would send quivers down the spines of everyone. She was just horrible, and everyone hated Aunt Kay, but Aunt Kay worked at the studios, and I to this day think that she had alienated everyone she knew except for my family who hated her, you know. But I think she was kissing their ass, and so she called down to my mom's house, and she said that she would help me get a job at the studios. So I went up to Paramount, which is where she was working, and I got a job at Paramount. And so when I got sober, I had been working at Paramount Studios for, I don't know, about 7 years. And so the people I knew were either surfers or, you know, I thought movie stars, ha ha ha. But, you know, people that worked at Paramount. So when I came to AA, you know, I wasn't really that impressed by the people in AA, but I was like, I just felt okay coming to AA. I felt like, for some reason, I didn't feel the shame I felt all the time, or the feelings of low self-esteem and all that stuff. You know, I was kind of with my people all of a sudden. So I started to feel, I just wanted to come to AA. It was like coming to this comfortable place where I felt okay. So I started my journey in sobriety. And my first year of sobriety, I didn't feel that I was a dope fiend. You know, I was a definite alcoholic, and that's what brought me here, but I didn't feel like I couldn't control my heroin and speed. But I didn't use it, you know. It was like, you know, weren't supposed to use that stuff, so I didn't use it. And my first year, though, I didn't feel that I was sort of playing along. But when I took my first year cake, that is when my commitment to never, you know, one day at a time, never, using speed or heroin or, you know, cocaine or any of those drugs again. And I really started my 100% commitment to AA when I took my first year cake. And then I became secretary of the meeting right after I got a year, and I started to really start to get into the AA, you know, social groups and having a lot of fun. You know, our first years of sobriety were a lot of fun. Jerry was there, and you know, we had beaches. We had AA Beach in Venice, and and we had AA dances, Coco. You know, and we had so much fun. You know, it was a great place to hang out. You know, and the people I got to know in AA, well, that's the beauty too of sobriety is I'm sober over 30 years, and I have friends from the program for for 30 years. My best friend I've known since she had a year, and I met her when I had 2 years. So, we've trudged this road for many decades together. And anyway, so after I'd been sober for a while, I was a secretary when I got sober, and I decided I was way too smart to be a secretary. Because I had what I refer to as an alcoholic ego, where I thought that you get to that place where you really think you're really smart. So I started bugging people at Paramount to get me into into editorial. So because I'm an alcoholic, I'm totally obsessed sometimes, and so I became obsessed with getting into this union. And I just started pestering people on the lot at Paramount, and with my aunt, by this time had died. She went to Friendly House, but she couldn't stand AA. I don't think she could stand it, because in her mind, she thought she was kind of a movie star or something, and and she just couldn't have the fantasy. It was like Blanche Dubois. She couldn't come to AA, and anyway, she couldn't be who she wanted to be here or something. And so she hid out in this apartment and smoked cigarettes and read romance novels. And, they found her dead because she wouldn't go out of this apartment. She wouldn't go to AA meetings. She wouldn't do anything, And so anyway, my aunt, who was really, I can't emphasize enough how crazy she was and what a crazy alcoholic she was. She played a really important part in my life, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so I was getting sober and having fun, and I got into the Editors Guild, and I started a career in that end of show business. And then my life became all about I was freelancing, so finding work, not finding work, going through that whole thing. And boy, Mike's pitch was so fantastic. I feel like I'm sort of lost up here, but anyway, that's all right. I'll be sober tomorrow anyway. And you won't even remember. You'll say, who was that, Big deal. Anyway, I think we're all sober this second. That's the important thing. Anyway, so now I'll get to the dramatic part. Well, first of all, I couldn't get a job, everything went digital. This is like really important to me, everything went digital. I was this great assistant editor when we were on celluloid, but then we went digital, and all of a sudden I couldn't get a job, and I was like freaking out. And I went to a meeting at 26th and Broadway, and I was taking my 20-year birthday cake. See, I've cut way ahead. Anyway, I'm leaving out a lot of boring stuff. No. Anyway, so I went to this meeting. I might go back to the boring stuff. Anyway, I went to this meeting, and I was taking my 20-year cake. I was so bummed. My life was over, Oh, my career was in shambles. Anyway, so I took this 20-year cake, and, it was really tragically sad. And I sat down, and this guy tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was the executive producer of this. He worked on some TV shows that I work on, and he said, "How are you doing, Mary?" And I said, "Oh, I can't get a job." And so he had a show that was on the air at Universal, and he said, "Well, I'll hire you," and because he had 30 days, and he thought, well, I had 20 years, so I was like a star, So a newcomer, a CNI newcomer, got me a job back in my career. So, then I started working again for a while. I was doing my digital thing and being, the star of the cutting room again. And then I got sick, and I had to have a liver transplant. Can you believe it? Because here I was, a social heroin addict, And You know, I didn't even shoot up nearly as much as some of the people here, and I got sick. And here I am, a nice guy and everything. Anyway, so I, you know, first I had to go on interferon. Somebody was talking to me about that tonight, and, you know, that it was back in the old days when it was horrible. You know, you had to walk in the snow to the pharmacy, and oh. Anyway, so so I took interferon for 6 months, and I swear to God, I told them I'd commit suicide if they made me keep taking that. And so they took me off that, and then I got sicker and sicker. I started bloating up, and you know, I was working. I worked to almost the last day. I was working on this TV series out in Burbank somewhere, and it was like boiling hot. I was swollen up like a balloon that was about to pop. In fact, I had, you know, you get liquid on your stomach, and you have to they have to drain it, you know. And so I was working on this TV series, and it was called Maloney Baloney. Well, I named it Maloney Baloney, but it was really Maloney. Anyway, the star of the series, well, you know, I was having my liver transplant, you know, pre-liver transplant disease. The star of the series had a back problem, so his back kept going out, and every time his back would go out, I got to run to Cedars and get all these tests and everything, and so it was like this perfect gift to me that he was sick, because normally, you know, you never can take a day off when you're working, you know, the cutting room, you know, you're trapped there. And so, and I would drive to work in the heat in the valley, and I had no air conditioning. My car, the air conditioner just broke, and I was sick, and I was all turning purple and everything. And then I'd go to Cedars and get all these tests, and finally, you know, I got really sick. When you get really sick from liver disease, you kind of get really confused, and you can't think anymore, and you really start going into another zone. And so that's what happened to me, is that happened so the doctor put me into ICU at Cedars, and I was in there for like 3 days, and they said, "We have a liver, do you want it?" And I said, "Yeah, slap it in me." No, anyway, it was a boy's liver too. I have a boy's liver. Anyway, and anyway, so I got this transplant. You know, I was only on the list for like 3 months, and I got a transplant after 3 days. You know, I mean, it was a miracle. And so then after I was in the hospital, you know, the day after surgery, I woke up, I was happy, joyous, and free. Oh! And then they gave me this medication, and it almost killed me. You know, well, it did. You know, I was starting to die, and the doctors, nobody knew what it was, and I was laying in the bed. I was all with tubes in me and everything, and then I ripped out the tubes when I was, you know, they medicated me. I told them not to. I said I want to go through this with no medication. Anyway, so I ripped out the cords and everything, and so they tied my hands down, and my hands were all swollen up. I was laying in bed with tubes coming out of me and everything, and then all these people from AA started coming in, and I thought, you know, I was one of these people, nobody's going to come and visit me. Even though, you know, I do fortunately have a lot of friends in the program, and when you stay sober for a long time, if you go to a lot of meetings, you get lots of friends. I don't care who you are, and you know, if you want to get friends fast, get commitments, because then you get to know people really quickly, and you know, if you're here tonight and you feel like, oh, all these people know each other, and they're, you know, blah, 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 I don't know anybody, get a commitment, you know, and that's how you get involved really quickly. So, but anyway, back to my little story. So I was in the hospital, and people would come and see me. I think they came to see me to show their babies. This is what will happen to you. Anyway, so I was laying there, and Jerry came to see me. A lot of people came to see me. So anyway, I got my hands on my address book that had 1 million names in it from AA, you know, and so I started calling people. I was like on morphine or something, you know. And I'd call people up and I'd say, come and see me and bring me some fried chicken. So I started having fast food orders, so everybody was coming to visit me. Well, I would call them and tell them to come and visit me, and then they would have to call the nurse to see if I could have fried chicken and pizza and all the weird things I was ordering. And anyway, so I got through my time in Cedars. I was in there for 2.5 months, and really for a long time, people really thought I was going to die. And during that 2.5 months, I really lost the ability to walk and talk, and I couldn't, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't brush my hair. I couldn't, I couldn't lift my arms. I couldn't do anything. And so then I got out of the hospital finally, and my sponsor let me stay in her beautiful home in Brentwood with her wonderful husband, the doctor. And I was there for like 2 days, and I was from Venice, I lived in Venice, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand it. It drove me crazy to be in Brentwood in this fancy house, so I escaped. And so I went back to Venice against everyone's orders, and everybody started freaking out. But anyway, I went back to Venice, and I was there, and I continued my recovery, and I, started, when I was able, I started to speak at AA meetings and like 12 step meetings and things like that. And one night, I started worrying. I was only, I'm 58 now, so I guess I was about 50 years old. And I thought, they won't let me retire. They won't give me permanent disability. And so what am I going to do? I'm never going to get another job again as long as I live. I had a liver transplant. I can't walk. I can't talk. I can't do anything. And so I went to speak at a meeting, and as I was reading the 12 and 12 to brush up on the steps, my phone rang, and it was this guy I had worked with like a decade before, and he hadn't seen me for 10 years or something, and he said, "What have you been doing?" No, he didn't say that. He told me about this TV pilot that he was hired for and how horrible the schedule was and blah, 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 and he kept talking, and then finally after he talked for like 20 minutes, he said, he hired me, and he said, "So what have you been doing?" And I said, "Oh, I had a liver transplant and I can't walk or talk. Is that okay?" And he said, "Yeah, that's fine." So anyway, I got another job, and I was back in showbiz. Yay! So, so I was able to work again for a while, and then, all of a sudden, my career just started to sputter to a halt. And so again, though, I was going to AA meetings. That's the one thing in my whole 30 years. I usually go to lots of meetings. This is my family. I'm happy in AA. My friends are here. People sometimes stop coming to meetings, and what happens to me is if I stay away from meetings, my brain starts going into the shame mode. I'm ashamed of myself. Nobody likes me. I'm not pretty enough. I'm too fat. What can I do? How can I change? What can I, and it's like a recording that goes over and over. And so if I go to meetings, though, I see my friends, and they're nice to me, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm okay, and I don't feel so bad. And so for me, AA is really an important thing. And over my 30 years, I've known a lot of people that went out, smoked pot, decided never to come back to meetings again because they didn't want to be a newcomer. And I swear to God, they are crazy. They are nuts. They're not sane people. And if you come to AA, you can kind of stay mellow, you can kind of go through things normally, events of life don't throw you into crazy tailspins. But if you don't come to meetings and you're sober, you lose the contact with your higher power, I guess, because, the people I've known that stop coming to meetings, when I see them and talk to them, they're nuts, and so I got to tell you, when you hear that people don't go to meetings anymore and they're okay, talk to them at length. Anyway, so anyway, my career was like ending. What was I going to do? 2003 was like financial nightmare city, So I was going to meetings all the time, sharing, about my drama, and this woman kept telling me. She kept telling me to go to this place in Marina Del Rey, because I was living in Santa Monica. She said, "Go to this place in Marina Del Rey. Everybody goes there from showbiz and networks and everything, and they'll probably help you find a job." And I thought, I'm a union member. I don't want to go to this stupid thing where all these wannabe people are. They're not going to help me. And so I clung to that for a long time and just whined and complained that I couldn't get a job and everything like that. And so finally I went to this place in the marina out of sheer desperation. And of course the people were pretty much what I predicted they would be, but on the wall there was a sign for senior housing. And I'm 58 years old, and there was, you had to be 55 to get into senior housing. And I thought, well, you know, cheap rent, yay. So I started investigating that, and I ended up finding this building in Hollywood that is a really cool old building, and it's a senior building, but a lot of people there are not like old people, you know. They're fun old people. Anyway, so I moved into this building, and because I've been going to AA meetings for 30 years, I went to the resident meeting because I'm used to going to meetings now, and I, you know, raised my hand to participate, and I met this man there that was just, you know, he wasn't my type or anything, but he was a nice guy, you know. I've never been married or had children. I have a problem in that area, I suppose. But anyway, I've learned to deal with it. Anyway, so this guy came up to me and we started talking, and he goes, you know, the LA Opera is hiring, and, you know, go back to the beginning of my story with the poor family and everything. Me work for the LA Opera, you know, and so I went down and applied for the LA Opera, and I started selling series tickets to the opera. And when you sell series tickets, you know, you have to talk about the operas, and they're like in Italian and French, and, you know, it's I had to learn a lot of phonetic pronunciations of a lot of things. And anyway, so I started to have this whole nother little career, and I was retired because I was in showbiz for 34 years. So I got this little pension, and then I had this little opera job, and then as soon as I moved to Hollywood, I joined the Chamber of Commerce, and I got involved with what's happening there, and I really was excited because they're really redeveloping and making, you know, but not in a destructive way. They're really preserving buildings, and, you know, I lived in Hollywood when I got sober, and so moving back there, you know, I used to get high up by the Hollywood Bowl. That was where I got high, and I'm living like a mile from there now. And I even walked up there. I mean, people are walking out like crazy. You wouldn't believe it. Oh, well. Bye. No. Anyway, stay sober, whatever you do. Anyway, so anyhow, so I moved up to Hollywood. I started working at the LA Opera, and I started going to the Hollywood Bowl, and I started working with all these singers, opera singers and musicians. I started working at the Philharmonic for a while, and I started this whole world opened up to me of the art world, you know, and theater and stuff like that I hadn't even, you know, I didn't talk about it too much, but in the 60s, when there was all this civil rights stuff going on, and you know, the hippies were happening in San Francisco and everything, I mean, I was like a brain-dead dope fiend. All I did was get high. I didn't care about anything. You know, I liked rock shows, but there was a time when I could get into rock shows with David Bowie and great stars like that, and I would stay in the VIP bar and get drunk, you know, rather than, because it was so cool to be in the VIP bar. There was nobody in there but me, you know. But I would just, you know, the times I wasted of seeing really talented people because I just wanted to get high and drunk are ridiculous. And so when I moved to Hollywood, I mean, this last time, I really did get involved with going to events like that, and I'm so moved by things now where I never was before. So I am really getting a whole new life from what's happening to me right now. And recently, you know, this little senior building I moved into, I was the great thing about a senior building is people die. And the 10th floor of my building, which is the top floor, there's like these 2 apartments that have the most fabulous view of Los Angeles. And the rent is like really reasonable. And it's a great building. Anyway, so I'm walking out to the elevator from my little teeny place, and I see this lady in the gurney, you know, with the manager. And I said, "What's happening?" And she said, "Well, I don't know." Anyway, so this woman was in the hospital for like 2 months, and I would go out on the fire escape and look at the view and go, "Oh, I want this apartment." And but I didn't want her, you know, I wanted her to be happy. I wanted her to be happy, joyous, and free, and heaven. Anyway, the truth was she had this beautiful apartment with a fabulous view. She didn't open the windows. She didn't open the shades. She didn't do nothing, you know. And so, anyway, I really do hope she's, anyway, so it turned out that it didn't look like she could move back because she would need assisted living, and that's not what that building is about, you know. And so they decided you know, this sounds so cold, but they were forced to start eviction proceedings against this poor old lady. And I said, "Don't do that, no." Anyway, so like 2 days after they did that, and she was not coherent. 2 days after they did that, she passed away. And so the apartment was mine. And so the end of my story is you know, my fabulous showbiz career ended. Life doesn't always come in the package you think it will, you know, and I have this most incredible apartment now. I have a great job with the LA Opera. I mean, it's a part-time thing, but still, you know, I get to go to really neat things and enjoy great cultural moving events. I mean, like hearing Mike speak tonight, you know, you get choked up. I went to the Hollywood Bowl the other night and saw a Gershwin show. It was a jazz show, and I mean, you get choked up. You get choked up by real talent, you know, and I'm enjoying that now. That's a part of my life that I'm finally enjoying. When I was working in post-production, thinking this was the end of the world, life and death, fabulous thing, I was living in Santa Monica, and I never came into town at all. You know, it was all about, you know, my job. You know, they might need me to work late, so I wouldn't get any tickets or anything for anything, because I always thought, well, I have to be available for work, blah, blah, blah. And now, you know, I'm retired, and I have my little part-time job, and I'm able to I have a whole new life. And I'm 58 years old, and I swear to God, I think I'm gonna live to be a real old lady, you know, and in my little bitchin' apartment. That's so cool, hey! Thank you, Jerry.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.